Hey, welcome to Hearsay. I'm Paul,
And I'm Patrick.
and welcome to today's show.
I'm supposed to say, how's it going? That was our thing. That was our new thing. I forgot. How's it going, Paul?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah.
Good.
Patrick, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I think we've both had crazy weeks, but we got to get it out there before we even tell people what we're doing in this video. We could have done a lot of things this week. Miss Marvel just ended. I really liked Miss Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of stuff happening in the entertainment industry. But both Paul and I saw Thor: Love and Thunder at the weekend separately, I might add. Um, I saw it and had thoughts and feelings, and then Paul saw it and had some strong feelings. At which point, I suggested maybe you want to tell the world. Maybe
uh,
this is the episode this week.
I definitely. Well, I guess I've been okay. So the other thing is that Resident Evil is also out on Netflix as well. Just kind of, and
Oh,
I would like to do that eventually. But yeah, Thor. Oh, yeah. And it's actually been venerated in the sense that I've been reading a few reviews and stuff like that, and it seems like I'm not alone in a lot of the kind of thoughts that I have. I might be alone in the rage that I've felt.
well, you're not even alone on this podcast
No.
because, and okay, I think to be fair, let's not bury the lead. Paul has some issues that are in the negative sense of issues with Thor: Love and Thunder. I am a bit just meh on it all, but have some issues too. And the more Paul will talk about it, I'm pretty sure the more rage filled I'll become also. So let's say Paul's starting here, I'm starting here. And by the end of it all, rather than me bringing him down, it's very likely, folks, that we'll go somewhere off the top of the screen.
Yeah, I don't feel bad in the sense of kind of maybe bringing the rage to everybody else, or as I said in our tweet, bringing the thunder.
Bring the
Um,
thunder. Well, and I can't even bring the love, but I'll give it my best.
yeah, it was an interest. So let's get through it.
Yeah.
So
Oh, spoilers.
yes,
Spoilers, everyone.
spoilers
I think
alert
it's going to be
entirely.
impossible to talk. The only thing that we're going to spoil, by the way, is Thor: Love and Thunder, because you
Yeah,
can't spoil any big MCU because of Thor: Love and Thunder, because it's not like a Spider-Man No Way Home or Multiverse of Madness or something where there's a whole massive load of interconnectivity. And I'd already said spoilers, so this doesn't even count now. Um, but yeah, we're either going to talk about this movie or we're not. So if we're going to talk about it, we're not going to be able to hold back. It seems to have made a load of money and a load of people have seen the damn thing.
yeah,
So quality is not an indicator of MCU success just yet. Although I think, Paul, what we should say before anything else is I like Thor. I like Taika Waititi. I loved Thor Ragnarok. I was really looking forward to this. Positive, positive, positive all the way into it. And so was everybody else. Um,
yeah,
and that may be part of the problem, but I actually don't think this is one of those cases where people go, "Oh, your expectations were too high." I actually went in with pretty low expectations. I just thought, "Oh, this will be entertaining and funny, and it'll be grand. It'll be fairly inconsequential." And I kind of came out going, "Yeah, I can see it was trying to be funny, and it was really inconsequential, and I suppose it was grand." So even my low expectations were kind of kicked a little bit in the kidneys,
yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get you. Like, yeah, I was going into it in the kind of going, this isn't going to be the next kind of, I guess, kickoff to the rest of the MCU's phase or anything like that. This is going to be a self-contained, not self-contained, but a self-contained plot, kind of thing that we're not going to be overly satirized with kind of the wider universe and multiverse
Yeah,
kind of thing. We were introduced to some concepts, but which may or may not come back eventually, but I don't think so. We've been some characters and stuff like that have been introduced, which will come back in certain ways and stuff like that, but we don't know. We don't know in the kind of grand scheme of things where and when and what and that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But so I went into it with kind of not low expectations because I like Ragnarok, as you said. I like Taika Waititi. I like Thor. Um, But at the end of this film, and the more I thought about it, I have now realized why. And this is a thing that Patrick kind of turned around and went, "Hang on a second, Paul. You need to calm down
Oh,
there."
I know
I
what he's
now
about to say
understand why
now.
Dark World is a bad film. Now understand it.
And if it took this to make you understand that, then this film did some good work. Because I've been saying for years that, no matter where we rank all the MCU movies, there's a massive gap before last place, and it was Thor 2 Dark World. And that's just the worst film by some stretch. But I do want to just shoot over to the comments, because I see we started a little bit later than usual, so everybody's joining us live. Appreciate it. I know some of the usual folks may have had to miss it out. I hope you're enjoying watching the record. But Brew's with us, and he says late night stream, at which point I'd like to say it's going to get sexy. It's going to get very sexy, but in a kind of comic book movie sort of way. Quick synopsis for anybody who's like, what the hell is Thor Love and Thunder? All that kind of jazz. Anybody who doesn't know, I'd be amazed. The Thor character, thanks to Chris Hemsworth and especially Taika Waititi making it such a fun comeback in Ragnarok. Thor's been on quite the adventure since he joined the MCU, since he was introduced. He's been in a lot more movies than his own movies. So he's been a big part of, the Avengers and the End Games and other things. But really, the advertising campaign using plenty of Guns N' Roses, which the film also uses plenty of Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
It's a real kind of, this is going to be hard rock 80s Thor fun. Guardians of the Galaxy-esque, I think, is maybe the right way to put what the impression they were giving of it out there was. And it's about Thor's long lost love, long lost for one whole movie. She was in Thor 1 and 2, wasn't in Thor 3, and now she's back in Thor 4. But with the twist of, hang on, she's also a Thor.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just giving away anything that was given away in the trailers. So it really is, what's the deal with all that? Love and Thunder, hey, hey, lots of bright colors, lots of 80s rock. And that's all you really need to know going into the movie. But then once you get into the movie, the story they try and tell, Paul, is where I think it's where some of the problems start. Because the opening scene is so bloody good.
Yes. Oh, yes. Can't agree more.
By the way, me and Paul haven't had a chance to talk about this properly other than a few exchange texts.
Yeah.
So this is exciting for me and Paul. If no one else watches this, I don't care. I finally get to talk to my mate about this.
Yeah. No, the opening sequence of kind of our introduction to the main villain for our story is fantastic. We've talked about this before. MCU does great kind of emotional, moral, or understandable kind of villains. It makes it a lot bit better. If you could slightly see the reasoning behind them being a villain, that's a great. It means there's a little bit of conflict.
They motivate wrongdoing like nobody has ever done before. Like, fair play to them. They really can.
Yeah, they make really good justified villains in the sense of it's not just a crazy person who's just, there are crazy people, but it's not just someone who's just been bad for the sake of bad, kind of thing. There's reasoning behind it. It means that when they introduce someone who is just insane and like, the Joker-esque character from the MCU, it'll make them a lot more scarier in the sense of we've already seen villains that have very kind of justified reasons for doing the things that they do. Gore the God Butcher's reasoning is great. Like, his whole introduction to the start was a really, really good shot by shot reasoning behind his whole butchering, I guess.
Yeah.
The opening sequence essentially shows which goes and we won't go through it step by step, but the Gore the opening shows Gore and his wife or his daughter essentially struggling a lot, which is in a desert, and eventually her passing, which he is then finds his God after he's been seen praying to him constantly. Eventually finds this oasis where his God is, and he essentially which comes up against them and kind of goes, why have you failed? All our people are dead. Like, why didn't you save us and stuff like that? Which the God is just, like most gods portrayed in a lot of films, he's very nonchalant, doesn't care about us, which breaks Gore.
And that's it, Paulo. So, Gore traveling across the desert with his daughter. Obviously, this is the time of pestilence, famine, and all sorts of end of day stuff for him and his people. Loses his daughter, meets, prays and begs for his daughter's life, not his. Please, his particular God, help him. Then, as he's about to pass, faces his God, and his God's a bit of a douche, essentially.
Yeah.
And implies, well, isn't your purpose just to suffer for me anyway? Aren't you just privileged to have worshipped me? That's your reward. And it coincidentally happens to be in a time and place where that God and friends have fought off the one of the things that can kill gods. So they've beaten a creature essentially that has a sword. Because I'm not going to go into the actual proper end of things. Just for general folks, there's a sword that can kill gods.
Yeah.
Christian Bale happens to be in the right place at the right time for that sword to go. There's a guy angry at gods right now. I can give him a hand. And Christian Bale kills his own god. And instead of becoming megalomaniacal and thinking, I killed a god, I am a god, they don't go down that route. They, it's God the Gore Butcher for a reason. His motivation is pure vengeance, that not just, he vows that all gods will die, not just because he has power. All gods will die because he sees all gods as being these unloving torturers that just play with their worshippers. Christian Bale, Paul, Christian Bale, fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Like, the guy is always incredible, but every scene he's in and every bit of acting he's asked to do in this movie goes beyond what this movie deserves, quite frankly. But for the story to set it up going, you know what we're going to do here? We're going to set up the philosophical question of gods and their interference or help or lack thereof with worship, the relationship between gods and their followers. And that's very deeply complex.
Yeah.
And you have Thor, a superhero god, running around. Another level of complexity. So by the end of that scene, my ass had practically pulled the cinema seat into me, because I was like, this is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then, Paul, what happens?
Well, we get 4 scenes with him in it. There's about 4 scenes with him in it. The longest one being the final conflict. And those 4 scenes are decent. They're good. Christian Bale in them, fantastic. They're also the majority of the movie that doesn't have humor in them.
Yeah, and what little humor there is played brilliantly, kind of sardonically by Bale.
Yeah, like it's very clear that Christian Bale decided to take ownership over the character, and did it his own way, kind of thing. Because Gore, not to go too much in it, Gore is a serial killer in the Marvel universe. Now, the serial killer that he kills gods. That's his God Butcher. He is the first serial killer of essentially the MCU.
Well, he's also significantly different in his comic form than he is here, even visually. So.
Yeah, he is more of an alien looking, with 2 long tendrils kind of thing. He more looks like
Voldemort with rabbit ears.
Yeah, Abe Odyssey with more with more Abe's kind of like Abe from Abe Odyssey with a little bit more kind of sinisterness of him. And rabbit tentacle ear things.
I think they did a good job with saying, right, we're going to use this character. We're going to, give them the changes for the screen. I'm always a big fan of the changes for the screen being for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they nailed it.
Yeah, no, he looks fantastic. He looks very sinister for like a lot of time throughout the film. It is portrayed that the sword which can kill gods also starts corrupting you, and from seeing him from his opening scene to the first time that you see him as the full-fledged butcher, he is very different, but also very the same. In the kind of like, there's darkness to him and stuff like that. You can see the corruption and stuff like that. And Bale plays this off well. Even there's a scene where he's interacting with children, and his whole kind of like, because he's had a daughter and stuff, you can feel that there's like a weird kind of like part of him that's like trying to kind of like connect a little bit with them, kind of thing. But his humor comes across is being corrupted by the Necros, or the sword that kills butcher or kills gods, and it becomes very weird and sinister kind of thing, which is great.
Well, that's the thing. Talk about in all the scenes, and yeah, I think there are too few scenes. Obviously, this is my favorite part of it. Also, I would have loved much more, but it would have been a different movie. Um, I know this is the good we're talking about, so we'll get on to the fun bad. Internet, don't go away. We'll be complaining again in a second. Well, I know you all love negativity, but the fact that he manages, and when I say he, I mean Christian Bale, and the portrayal of the character and the way the character was written around it, only kills one person on screen the
Yeah,
whole time. All the other kills are off screen, yet manages to be both sympathetic and menacing all the way through. It's really impressive. Really, really is impressive, because the level of menace that he manages to bring without them ever having to show, and when they tell he's not even on screen, they'll show the outcome of him going and killing massive god creatures. But yeah, that scene with the children, he brings such menace, yet such sadness that you maintain a level of sympathy for him.
yeah,
And that's what makes that character's journey work as an overall arc.
yeah. Yeah, no, it does. I don't like the fact that they didn't show any other kills. I would have preferred them to show more kills of he is the God Butcher. And we
Absolutely, but to be
like,
honest with you, again, that's why I say it would be a different film if they'd made the film I want. You would get what you want, Paul.
well, this is yeah.
It's all the other stuff that was being done outside of these wonderful scenes that we're talking about, which make up 1/10 of the movie, I guess, if even.
Yeah,
Yeah, 10th.
very, very rare. Like, as it says, the only parts where humor isn't really brought in, and when it is brought in, it's brought in specifically to continue on with the kind of malice and weirdness and sadness and kind of things. Because every scene without him is just chocked full of kind of humor and stuff like that. Let's go into Thor, because as Thor is the main character, let's go into a bit of him and kind of show his new look and some of the other kind of elements to him. So he has a new suit, kind of thing, very much like his old suit. Also, he is in the start, his opening kind of showing of what he's been doing. He's kind of more rocking the 80s kind of like heavy metal star, kind of like, the leather vest without the sleeves, sleeveless leather vests, kind of like, he looks pretty badass. I did like the look of him kind of not having
It's
the
a look I
armor.
wanted to be able to pull off back when it was an actual look. But yeah, he pulls it off well. And can we just pause for 1 second, get it just on the table? You agree with me, I'm assuming. Chris Hemsworth does a good Thor. Like this movie can't be held against Chris Hemsworth. Anything that we're going to say negatively, I don't think it's Hemsworth that is the issue here. He still seems to be having fun playing the character, and he can do comedy, and he can certainly do action. He's got muscles on his muscles, and he can pull off looks. He can pull off a denim sleeveless or even a leather sleeveless.
No, he looks badass, and yeah, Chris Hemsworth is very good in this. I like. I'll go into a little bit more kind of like, I guess I don't like the fact that they're making him more stupid over time rather than kind of
Yeah,
maintaining. A lot of my problems with this is probably the de-evolution of a lot of the characters rather than kind of the evolution of them. But Chris Hemsworth isn't at fault. I also believe that which goes Valkyrie isn't I can't I believe
Tessa
that,
Thompson.
yeah, Jesse Thompson and Natalie Portman and even Russell Crowe, I don't feel are in any way. I feel like they may have been misused and other things, but as I said, we'll get to them
Yeah,
as we go through. But Thor, yeah, my Thor has always had a great place in my heart of kind of like the Marvel universes. He's always been fun and stuff, and Infinity War was like the pinnacle moment for him that I loved, and then they kind of squandered it with Endgame, and then Ragnarok kind of dumbed him down, and then they started to dumb him down even further, kind of thing. which is my only problem with Thor overall. Um, but in this, he's open to see with that from Endgame, he is left with the Guardians of the Galaxy. He has moved on to kind of go with them, explore the universe, find out who he is, and everything like that. We get that in a montage, which I wasn't very big fan of. It felt like there was going to be a Guardians of the Galaxy involved a lot more in the.
Well, the trailers lied, Paul, is the simple way of putting this.
Yeah.
The trailers misrepresented the movie you were going to see. And I don't mind that, but in this case, I thought, it was cheap. It was cheap the way that the promotional campaign did that.
Yeah, like I was looking forward to kind of maybe not him becoming more part of the Guardians of the Galaxy, because we had a lot of that with Infinity War, but maybe them kind of showing about, you can just be who you are, like, because each of the Guardians are very unique in their own kind of, like, but all come together in kind of in a nice way.
Yeah.
So I thought he would at least learn some lessons about, just being who he is or finding who he is and stuff like that. That was the aim of this movie, but not in the way that I thought it was going to go. And I was a little annoyed about the kind of moving very quietly and quickly over the kind of goodbyes and stuff. Though I did enjoy the moments that they were involved in, the whole like, you just look into the eyes of the people that you love kind of thing, and him slowly moving in. That was fun. It was a fun.
We're gonna kick the hell out of this movie on its humor in a minute, I'm assuming, Paul.
Oh yeah.
Just as a guess. But that does not mean, and I want this said early, that does not mean that there weren't good jokes that landed hard. There were some hilarious moments. There were some brilliant visuals. There were some great one-liners. But they were in a sea of other jokes that weren't landing, being overused, callback on callback on callback, sometimes being used as plot points. A lot, like using jokes as plot points.
Yeah.
Almost, it's. Yeah, I'm the one. I'm waiting for you to kick off and go bananas. I've been waiting for this all week, folks. I'm expecting Paul to be licking the screen right now in rage.
Well, let's get into that part. Okay, so I'm gonna like
kick off, boy.
Like, so Taika Waititi, he's the director of the film. He also helped write the screenplay of this and everything like that. He helped write. He directed Ragnarok. He also helped edit the screenplay and stuff like that. From this movie, it is from Thor: Love and Thunder. It is very clear that the studio had one hand on the wheel while he did Ragnarok, and then he's become so popular, which I have been very happy with like Our Flag Means Death and everything like that, and the new series of What We Do in the Shadows
and Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah, like he's become the hot topic, which has given him a golden ticket. They should have never given him his golden ticket. I'm sorry for Thor. Korg is essentially his mouthpiece. He was in Ragnarok. It's essentially his character. It's the big rock guy that everybody has fallen in love with, which because I fell in love with.
Me too.
Taika should have stayed at that character. Instead, what he did to me is he then decided to make meat mechas of Jessica Thompson, Chris Hemsworth, and Natalie Portman, and then crawl inside them and essentially control them like horrible meat puppets.
So you're saying like Tessa Thompson and co, all you can hear his voice in their dialogue, and particularly in their quippiness.
Yeah, there is like Valkyrie is probably the closest to Valkyrie from Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
Like she has changed a lot and stuff like that, and there's a bit confusion parts to it. But there's no character voice in this. It's just Taika kind of giving his quips and stuff like that, which is a big problem. If I can't hear the character's voice, and I'm hearing a beloved comedian that I love and stuff like that constantly, I'm just like, well, these aren't characters. These are just Taika Waititi not looking like Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth and Jessica Thompson. So, like
I hear what you're saying, and like there's going to come a few points here where I'm going to have to argue back as the proxy other side of any argument. On this one, I don't really have anything to push back on other than to say, I guess the Valkyrie character, I didn't feel it from as much, but more what I felt there was I would have rather not have Natalie Portman and actually have had Valkyrie, because the two of their screen time was so shared and mixed that I don't think either of them was served as well as they could have been. So there's a little bit of that to it. I also, and you know, you said everybody did a good job. I'm going to be the one to kind of go against that a little bit and say I think Natalie Portman didn't really land this plane, even with what she was given. I'm happy enough that, and again, big spoiler, I'm happy enough that she may be cameo only from here on out. Who knows? But I don't think she, like, don't get me wrong, her storyline and what she was given was not good, in my opinion. But even her execution was not as good as those around her. But part of all of that, I absolutely agree with you. It's, you know, the way you see Taika Waititi being interviewed, he's just always being kind of a bit sarky, a bit kind of ha 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 ha. It does feel like he was given a golden ticket and there was no reins put on him, that he essentially opened the movie with a great scene, had that awesome. I was fine with the Guardians of the Galaxy scene. I was even fine with, you know, Thor, Chris Hemsworth jumps on Stormbreaker, his axe hammer, and flies off like a witch at one point. You can do that as part of a visual gag and get away with it, and then have the fight they had as a gag. But it's almost like after that, I kind of felt, oh, this isn't going to stop. It's just Taika Gag Town from here on out.
Yeah, and my biggest issue with that is that it didn't make the emotional parts in any way impactful. Then there wasn't enough time given to them. It was more of a surprise when they came up, kind of thing. And this isn't even to do with Christian Bale and Gore. This is literally just any kind of emotional moments in which the characters had between each other. You know, like there's a lot of that, which is like kind of there's some deep characters kind of which was meant to develop into a lot of stuff, but it didn't.
So we sent each other a couple of quick notes on our likes and dislikes, and one of my dislikes was overall tone. Felt like it was made for laughs only, and this was the crux of my point. And this is a film that has cancer, a guy butchering gods, you know, the philosophical question of gods and their worshippers, and like the list goes on. Every possible emotional center was rocked out of balance. So you're right, you could never land the Jane Foster Thor story. Her reason, you know, she's stage 4 cancer. She's going to become, you know, Thor thanks to a mechanism that we'll talk about, I think, in a moment. But you can't really get behind the emotional core there. And that's cancer, folks.
Yeah.
Like, it was bad enough a minute ago when I was talking about the fact that they open with, we may deal with the concept of God, godettes, and worshippers. Like, it's really annoying when you think about it, that what you've said is nothing but true. It took the emotional center out of anything that they were ever going to be able to speak on.
Yeah, like, okay, so Jane Foster has the brilliant astrophysicist has discovered that she has stage 4 cancer, very little little time to kind of live. So she tries to either save herself and also tries to finish as much of her work as possible. She feels like she's drawn by Mjolnir towards the shattered remains of Mjolnir, and essentially, which they have also removed the first transformation scene of her getting Mjolnir and turning into the mighty Thor, which becomes her name. There's such a thing where it turns out, because the Mjolnir thing is meant to give you good health and stuff, but it turns out that it's actually just stopping her from healing.
Yeah,
which is a huge, big emotional, ethical kind of thing. Do you live for a very short time as the hero, trying to help as much as you can, or do you try to fight the cancer and you know, possibly live once again also for a short time? There's a very difficult kind of coming to terms with your own mortality. What do you do with your time left? What do you do with
the time you have left? Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. There's a lot of that, and then also trying to keep it away from Chris Hemsworth, from Thor, who was her, like, you know, a very, like, you know, big love of her life, kind of thing. But there's nothing. It's wrapped around very quick scenes of her breaking down, quick with weird speaker moments of both her and Valkyrie, completely forgetting about the fact that like she has stage 4 cancer, in no way like, actually having an emotional kind of proper thing between the two people. That would have been the perfect scene of Valkyrie losing her sisters, saying that she needs a sister, and also for the fact is that the eventuality that she would possibly lose Jade Foster as well.
Yeah,
That's a really
it's
emotional part, and it was fucking ruined by that
and it's
stupid.
on the table right in front of. That's the other thing, is like walking right up to the door, and instead of going through it, doing a funny dance and walking away. That's what an awful lot of this movie turned out to be. Right up to the precipice, and then, nah, I think I'll just do a fart joke and walk on, which is disappointing because, and I think after we're going to take a break in a moment, Paul. After the break, can we talk about how the mighty Thor comes to pass with Mjolnir? Because I don't think we have enough time right now. But just to continue your point until the break, all of the relationships were undermined by that.
Mhm.
Because when Jane comes back as the mighty Thor, so she has the hammer, the healing of the hammer, as you point out, it's staving off death rather than anything else. But what they do with that is turn it into a love triangle joke that will not go away. Because you're supposed to have Thor, Chris Hemsworth, the mighty Thor, Jane Foster, a relationship where they were, each other's first true love, so to speak, is suggested. And they both happen to have hammers because it's Thor. That's fine. But Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, the hammer who he's replaced Mjolnir with, turns into the central theme of the whole thing. Of this is our love triangle
Yeah.
between the two of them and their weaponry, up to the point that you have a recurring gag where there's a hammer floating in because it's jealous that Thor is looking at his old hammer. Like, talk about taking the love triangle and pissing around with it so much that it became nothing more than an annoyance on screen. And don't get me wrong, I was in a cinema with a row behind me. There were two ladies who were laughing their heads off, so much so that they would repeat lines after they were said and laugh. Those people.
Yeah.
It's like, they just said that. He's like, yeah, we all heard them say that. And it was disrespectful to Mjolnir. I'm going to just get it out there because I know I've only got about 30 seconds. If anybody knows anything about me, there's a Mjolnir up there. Thor, not my favorite Avenger or any of that stuff, but Mjolnir, much like for me, Star Wars will always be Chewie and the Falcon. All of the MCU will be Captain America and Mjolnir, because Mjolnir is my jam.
Yeah.
That's it. And they did nothing but piss around with what was one of the coolest things in the MCU and kind of degrade and undermine and use it all as a bit of a joke.
Yeah. Like,
so there's my anger. There's the source of my anger, Paul.
Well, we'll get back into that right after these messages. So stick around, everybody. Okay. And we're back. Thanks very much for holding on to that. We were just talking about Mjolnir and Stormbreaker's kind of love triangle involvement. I agree with you. Like, it was such an just going back to Ragnarok, it was such an emotional part to see the hammer get destroyed. It was such a horrible moment in the MCU to see that majestic weapon, a weapon to build and to destroy, as Odin which good said, to be replaced by Stormbreaker, a powerful weapon, like as in it is just a weapon. There's no, it's not the conceive of kind of a building kind of tool. I enjoyed the joke about when he's talking when he's trying to like get Malner to come over, and then like the axe comes in. I found it funny. It was
fair enough.
It was a fun kind of moment of kind of just. I think it was more about the reaction to Thor, like as in Thor's reaction to when Stormbreaker floats in and he's just like, oh hey, I think he plays that pretty well.
Can do stuff. But how did you feel at the 5th or 6th time that joke happened?
The only time that I enjoyed it was the first initial time when he was like, he tried to pull Malner back over to him, and Stormbreaker floats in. And then the other time when they're getting ready to go and he picks up Malner and he's just like, oh, okay, that's, and then hands it back to her. And then Stormbreaker kind of floats in and he goes, what? And then he those two moments I enjoyed. After that, it was just like, all right, we're over this now, right? And then there was there was a few other moments where I was just like, and I get that people anthropomorphize kind of weapons and tools that they're kind of long, connected to with a long time and stuff like that. But the the callbacks and stuff like that is just one of the symptoms that happen throughout this movie. The introduction of a character which we had no idea about for a while, Astrid slash Axel.
Oh yeah.
Which is another callback kind of, or not a callback thing, but a joke that just didn't land for me at all.
Nope.
Astrid is Heimdall's son. He has some of the powers of Heimdall, like the projection of himself and the also being able to project other people to where he is. There's a joke in there about him wanting to be called Axel instead of Astrid.
Because he's a big Guns N' Roses fan.
Yeah, because he's a good big Guns N' Roses fan, and it's literally just, it's Thor going, I'm going to call you Astrid because that's what your father calls you, and he goes Axel, and then it's literally just Axel, Astrid, Axel. That goes on for way too long and shouldn't, it's just like, you have been captured by essentially a serial killer, psychopath person, as far as you're aware, and this is what you're arguing about. This is not like the humor in this
tonally it didn't work, and that's what killed some of the jokes. It wasn't in tone with the situation that they were setting up. There was a dissonance there between what they were doing and the situation they were in.
Yeah, and as we said before, really emotional moments were not given the levity that they should have. There's a moment where Jane Foster tells Thor she has cancer, and a couple of seconds later they cut to Cord singing karaoke, and they're just like, let that sit. Can you not? Are you is Taika Waititi is Taika Waititi so uncomfortable with certain emotional lines, certain emotional scenes, that they cannot, Marvel has a whole thing of being able to lighten the mood, after, but the whole thing is that you need to have the mood to be able to lighten it.
Yeah, exactly. And think about some of the greatest moments in the MCU. Think about Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, whatever you want to call her, eating a sandwich, sitting there on the verge of tears when she thinks everything is done. It's one of the most powerful scenes in the MCU, but it's also one of the most powerful scenes in the last number of years of filmmaking. And that's in, Infinity War. It's in a Thanos movie. And her interaction with Steve Rogers takes it from that lack of hope to that shared despair to that transition out to, right, we're able to go back to our space fantasy movie. And that's a transition. And that's a transition from, having your heart in your throat, having a lump, holding back a tear, to, Tony Stark shooting lights out of his hand. It's doable. They can do it. I think Taika Waititi can do it because of his other body of work. Why didn't he do it here? That's my question. Why? I think you're right that this was just one of those Everybody's hands were taken off the steering wheel, and I think he was just having a fun old time.
Yeah, it feels like a film that was just it feels like a film that was made for kids, but for some strange reason has cancer and a serial killer in it. And it's just like,
Mm,
you can't do this. You can't make a kids film with those two concepts. If you want to do the
yeah.
God Butcher, then do him alone. You can make him into some kind of quirky kind of character and stuff like that. Still serial killer and still menacing and stuff like that. But remove the cancer subplot. Like,
Yeah,
make that a
and you know,
reveal for another film.
you can mix things, but not like this. This was a sandwich with the bread in the middle, and you had mustard on and mayonnaise on your two hands. It was all structured in the wrong way. It was, you know what? Maybe that's it. It was just really badly structured for what they were doing. Because like you say, it felt like a kid's film. But you're gonna take a kid to this and not only talk about cancer and a serial killer, but then go, oh, and by the way, I know if you were scared, it's all right, you can say your prayers tonight. We vaguely brought up the idea that gods are never listening to you, and never really dealt with that as part of our story. So
Yeah.
good luck, little Tommy. Hope you sleep well. But Paul, can we talk about the powers of Thor? Because for everybody who isn't really into all this stuff, I can tell you why that stupid hammer called Mjolnir is important to the MCU, not Norse mythology or the comics. I'm just saying the average Joe stuff that people have seen.
Yeah.
They introduce Thor, the hammer is important because
Mhm.
he's a bit of a petulant child. He gets fired down to earth, and the hammer is sent too. And the
Yeah.
hammer is that avatar to say, you know, whoever so shall be worthy, you know, will possess the powers of Thor. If you can lift the hammer, you're worthy. It comes up in later films. Is Vision a real person? What if what if the hammer was in a lift? Everybody has a go at lifting it, except for Black Widow. She doesn't need to answer that question. Steve Rogers almost moves it in that scene in Ultron. Eventually Steve Rogers does wield it, and everybody has that moment where their heart explodes and their brain melts and they cry. That was me. Everybody else has that moment of knew it, including Thor. Knew it.
Yeah.
um it's a wonderful vehicle in storytelling, but it's also a wonderful visual thing. It's he can call to it and it'll be coming through walls as a great sound effect. And when he holds it, that's your Thor.
Mhm.
That's your superhero moment of him hammer. Before lightning ever happens, him grabbing hammer is Thor. And they've built that up all the way. And they
Mhm.
also built up that incantation that his dad, the All Father, said, enchanted enchanted the hammer, I should say, or whatever the correct phrasing. When you do that to something is,
He enchanted it. Yeah.
he enchanted it with the incantation. He imbued it. That was used this time as an explanation for why. And I know, I think you may have a problem with how Jane got the mighty Thor stuff based on this.
It's a real big problem, man.
I didn't have a problem necessarily when they showed, okay, he basically says in the same sort of way, or at least Mjolnir takes it that way, to say in the past at some point when him and Jane Foster are together, he's like, look after her. Just,
Protect her.
hammer, always look after her, protect her. That at a bare minimum is a way to get past it and go, okay, that's why that's why the hammer called out to her. But her being worthy or not, and I need to remind everybody in the audience, this woman had stage 4 cancer, was a world-renowned physicist doing amazing things. She is the reason in the first movie that Thor becomes worthy to lift the hammer again. You do not need to find or look very hard to find reasons for Jane Foster to be worthy to pick up Mjolnir. She's a cancer fighter who's ready to literally be a superhero fighter or a supervillain fighter. There are lots of ways to say that she can be worthy. I don't know, Paul. I think you've got some serious issues with this, so I'm looking forward to hearing them. They didn't do this the right way for me. I let it skate over me. I was more worried about everything else that was going wrong. But what do you think?
It's bullshit. It's absolute
In in
bullshit.
in
It's
what way though?
like, okay, as you said, her whole point of in the movie is that she's going back to the lab. She doesn't want to do chemo, or she's trying to avoid chemo. She wants to go back to the lab. She wants to continue on with her work. Her work is very important, like, trying to make that, like, case, or which is, Cassie says, this is like, you need to stop and, like, stop trying to save the world or help the world and stuff like that, and go through the thing that you're going through. She doesn't. She wants to get back to the lab. She wants to help, like, she wants to help herself, but she also wants to try continue on with her work. She wants to always do it, and it isn't until Melner calls to her that she figures out that she might be able to, like, survive, or because it says that it will bestow great health and vitality and stuff like that. It doesn't tell you that it will heal you or anything like that. She's also selfless in a lot of ways in a lot of the other movies. She's also which is she does help Thor evolve into a character, in which makes him worthy to wield the hammer and stuff like that. It just irks me that they had to put in an extra charm that essentially goes, yeah, you're not worthy, by the way. It's the hammer trying to protect you. That's why you're able to wield it. And it's and then the extra layer to it, which is my feminine thing coming out, is she's the first female character to lift the hammer. And she's not worthy.
Well, the thing is, I agree with you, but my viewing experience disagreed with you at first. As in, I was fine with the incantation that he's like, look after her, and Mjolnir goes, hey, okay, I was listening, as a reason to call out to her, as in, I'm here, and I'm ready to look after you. I could give that a pass until later on he whispered into Mjolnir again and went, by the way, I've always been able to tell you to give everybody the powers of Thor. When he gives a high school or a preschool class of 30 kids the power of Thor. And then I was like, oh, this is complete and utter bullshit. Like, unbelievable level, the level of bullshit this has become. And that means at no point was she worthy in the way that I wanted to take it. Because as far as I was concerned, they missed a massive opportunity for Darcy or somebody to be there and go, she picks up the hammer and it's like, you must be worthy. Or she's like, I didn't think I'd be worthy. And have Darcy say to her, lady, you've been fighting for the people of Earth for as long as I've known you. You're a cancer fighter. You're more worthy than most people will ever meet. And can you imagine the message that would have sent to the world and people who are suffering with illnesses and fighting so hard against them? They're bloody worthy of lifting Mjolnir. That's the message that should have come out of that. Instead, it was like, it wasn't corrupted for me until he did it a second time and was like, by the way, magic hammer of mine, instead of being deadly Mjolnir, who's the best thing since the Millennium Falcon, is like, yeah, give a bunch of kids my power because we could do with a scene where all the kids fight shadows.
Yeah,
like waffle bollocks is what it is. It's waffle bollocks.
It's the biggest single thing that irks me throughout this film is the fact is that they made Jane Foster not worthy. They just, like, because the whole thing is that they don't need, I don't think they needed the protection thing if they were going to try play it off as his addition to the enchantment was what was the reason why the hammer called out to her rather than why she was able to lift it. They didn't play that off in any kind of way, like they didn't have her picking up the handle and then hearing the voice of Odin again from the scene of the first one. We missed that. The first time we see her is literally while she's still wielding it.
Exactly.
So like it's just a constant...
Like, I had doubt until like the second grade class got it. I had doubt in my mind that, okay, well, maybe they forgot to show, and it's implied that she's worthy for all these good reasons, and they just made a bad movie and didn't show it. But they removed the chance of her being worthy in that way when they went back to that well again and were like, yeah, this is just a wang doodle that we can use to do anything now. So I'm 100% with you. It's an insult. Is what it is.
Because my thing is that this character has been dumbed down a lot more than she should have, with her constant trying to figure out her own catchphrase kind of thing, which is a callback that consistently happens. which because
Mm.
her whole like the part where they're just like, all right, let's go, and then she like blows out of the building and then comes back a couple of minutes and went to jump the gun on that one. It's like you are like, I understand that you're excited and you're kind of on a high of being this healthy again, but you are an astrophysicist who won a Nobel Prize. Like, you are a lot more calculated and intelligent than the character that you're portraying right now. No matter how kind of excited and endorphin you feel by the power of Thor, like, you were still you, you
Yeah.
know? And it really irked me about the dumbing down of this character. And it felt like this is where my whole, like, it felt like Natalie Portman knew it and it was reining it in, because it was just like, anytime the part where she's in the bathroom, she drops the hammer and it reveals her being sick, and you're like, oh shit, she's not getting better. She did, I think she did really well in that part, but it is immediately buffered by humor, and that part feels really kind of like, ugh,
cheap,
played off. No, I feel like Natalie Portman was just like, I understand that I've just done a really important moment for this character and revealing the fact is that I am choosing to be the hero despite the fact that it is killing me, is completely played off by the fact that I'm now dancing with a super grenade looking speaker thing.
Yeah, maybe her character was just written badly enough that I'm some of the residual stink is sticking on to Natalie Portman for me, whereas Hemsworth, no matter how badly some parts of that were written, when it was good, it was great with him. There's a scene where he meets Sif and she's missing an arm, and the greatest gag in the whole movie happens. It's where he's talking to her and she's like, I'm dying here. And he makes the gag of maybe your arm's in Valhalla. I thought, you know what? That in isolation in this movie, if the rest of the movie hadn't been gags, that would have landed great. Did you hate that gag?
I hated that moment.
You didn't find that funny?
Oh my God. Why the hell in the middle of so it's the first time we've seen Sith since Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well,
it's the first time
we see her in a kind of a blurry video thing asking for help, but yeah, I know what you mean. This is where they meet again.
This is the first time that we see her in person, which could, and she's missing an arm and she's dying. And the only thing, like, she's just like, no, don't. I like this. I can die as a warrior. Yeah, and then he goes, well, actually, technically, you survived the battle, so you won't go to the. That's not what you say to a person who is dying and is your friend, and you haven't seen them since now.
I got to be honest with you, going into that scene, the way I felt when she said that and he cracked wise, I felt, this is the Warriors. This is the Warriors code between those two. It ain't over. You're all right. You're missing an arm. Maybe your arm's in Valhalla. That was a real look. He knows she's not dying. They're doing the battlefield camaraderie thing. I can understand why. I see, like, some of the jokes that landed for you earlier that didn't for me. I guess it's probably going to be 50-50 as to where any of these things work.
The arm joke was funny. I enjoyed the arm joke. It didn't need him to essentially clarify on the rules of Norse mythology on the sense of her going to Valhalla after, I
understand your I can understand why you felt it's all in bad taste at that point.
It's not even in bad taste. It was just like when the first time you see this character in so long and then he pulls a joke, and I was just like, this is the kind of film that we're getting. In the sense of,
at that point we were squarely in the middle of this is the film that we're getting, which was kind of disappointing in and of itself.
Because
but yeah, actually, then let's run through some of the gags and see. We'll both give thumbs up or thumbs down to them. How did you feel about the goats overall? Because a lot of people hate the goats, a lot of people love the goats.
I enjoyed the goats. I found them funny.
I was fine with the goats. Yeah. It worked for what it was. When they go to the House of the Gods, when they go to Omni Planet, Omni whatever it is.
Yeah.
How did you feel about, because I don't know why, but I think this annoyed one particular person that was walking into the cinema with me. I overheard some talk. Bao, the god of dumplings.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most obvious, just one moment visual gag in the whole film. And I was completely fine with it. It's like, well, there's the gods, that's Cod's Gorg, hey nanny nunu. You could obviously tell there's a Kiwi joke in there.
Yeah.
There's this god, there's that god, and there's the god dumplings. Hi, or bow, or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, Grant, you're already in a ridiculous spot at that point. have a wee fun with the ridiculousness for a second, then move the feck on and never go back to the dumpling.
Yeah, didn't care. It was a good like. I don't think it was just like it's a memorable thing. It's not going to be one of those things that I'm going to be like railing and raveling about. So that was fine.
Mm,
Tom's in the middle, I guess.
yeah. So how about Zeus, played by Russell
Russell
Crowe,
Crowe,
which
man.
I really enjoyed, and I
Yeah.
thought Russell Crowe chewed it up to the right amount.
Yeah.
Again, in a better film, it could have been the funny sequence.
Oh
It
yeah.
could have been the ridiculous sequence if the whole thing around it hadn't been trying to be the ridiculous sequence the whole time. But it landed because you felt, well, this is really ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he's doing an Italian accent for a Greek guy. I don't know what he was
It
doing exactly.
was it was a little bit, yeah. But
But but he threw himself into it, and there was something charming about that, I thought.
I enjoyed Zeus. I enjoyed Zeus a lot. I enjoyed his walk down the stairs, especially, which is the little kind of flick of the skirt kind of thing and walking
Yeah.
down in the most ridiculous fashion. I enjoyed his like showmanship and stuff like that. It was very very
Oh,
funny and
his
stuff like
his
that.
baton twirl with Thunderbolt was just, his whole halftime football game routine that
Oh
he
yeah,
did with that was just wonderful.
yeah. It was if it really gave you a lot of the visuals of what this character is, and it's just like this character is very powerful but over the top kind of thing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the flick part. I enjoyed the whole thing around the flick part in because we don't get enough. I don't think we get enough. Which goes women swooning over men in these movies a lot more. Which
Oh,
I would
I was wondering because the trailer showed it. I was
yeah.
wondering if they're going to pixelate the butt, and I nearly thought if they do, it'll be funnier. But then I realized, like, and I was there with my wife, and there was an awful lot of there was female representation in this film. There was female representation in the room with me, and I thought, are those people here out of genuine interest to support, the mighty Thor? But at that moment, I knew there was at least one row that was there for the ass, and
Okay.
I thought, you know what, fair play. Like Steve still got America's ass, but it would appear Thor has the God's butt.
Yeah.
Um, Now I've got to do some serious work on mine after seeing that. I was like, the whole way home was telling my wife, that wasn't really Hemsworth. He's too old. There's no way that's a butt double right there. I don't know if it is, but that's the story I'm sticking to. So nobody disprove it.
No one. Yeah, no, I enjoyed that gag. That gag was funny and stuff like that. Kind of thing. Um, what other gags do you feel? The Astrid gag, I hated. I
Yeah,
hated
that was rubbish.
I hated him like uh using opening the bridge and which was blasting through the building and then coming immediately like being thrown back down and kind of like coming back in and going, okay, well, what's your plan? I hated that part.
Oh yeah,
It's just like that's a very that feels like it's being put in here to cover like 5 sec like a 10-second like gap kind of thing.
yeah.
Jane Foster's jumping through the hole and then coming back and going, I kind of jumped the gun with that. Not a fan. The yeah, her callback to
Oh,
catchphrases.
the catchphrase thing was particularly annoying, and it got very annoying at the end when there's the whispered catchphrase, because what was a crappy joke has now become it's become parting words for her character to him. Ew, just ick in a lot of ways. The only other gag that I can think of that really worked for me, there was a visual gag, forced perspective of the goats are towing the ship to the negative zone, and planet is quite small as it turns out, and they head face first into it, and there's a nice camera tilt. I thought it was a good visual gag at a moment where they were about to do some visually spectacular things with color,
Yeah.
and I thought that worked really well. There's Taika. Like, my brain is almost going, that's Taika Waititi. That's the genius of Taika Waititi. He's taking humor and injecting it in the places where you're about to have a tonal shift of epic proportions and a visual shift of epic proportions. It's all brilliant. Unfortunately, it's that sandwich that every third layer is cheese that's been dropped on the ground, somebody's walked on. But it's the crispy lettuce at that moment.
Yeah. Like I can't. Yeah. As I said, the visuals kind of the goat thing was funny. The screaming and stuff like that, I found them funny. Um, it was funny that it was essentially the mark of every time the Thor arrived at a place, which I did find funny because like it's essentially announcing his thing in the most ridiculous fashion that I can only. But I would have loved to seen Gore's reaction to essentially screaming goats coming out of nowhere, kind of thing. Gore's visuals, the shadow world, the shadow creatures, and everything made it feel like it was like an old school film, like back in like when they did, and also the
What was
really
the
nice,
Seventh Seal and stuff like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
and the nice and Ghost, you know, the weird kind of shadow go in Ghost, um, and it also felt like they were shadow puppets. The reason that they were
I know what you
mostly
mean.
spidery kind of like things was because they were shadowy puppety, which was
Yeah,
really
I know
cool.
exactly what you mean. That worked. I
It
thought,
worked really well.
again, just about everything around Gore, including the visuals, worked. Which is the same thing. Everything we've complained about. Not all the visuals were done very well around Korg and the rest of them. Which, by the way, I'm not kicking sand at visual effects artists. I know they're never given enough time to do their job. So, of course, that's why we're getting ropey visuals in these massive movies now, because people are being rushed. It used to take longer to make these movies. Now they're so much of the background, other than the main characters and including the main characters, is digitally animated or digitally affected in some way. So of course there's going to be some scenes where things are a bit unpolished. But like thumbs up for just about everything around Gore
Yeah,
visually. Thought it all worked really well.
yeah.
And his fighting style of coming out of shadows and stuff, very cool. Very
Oh
cool.
yeah, because you know he's not a fighter himself. Like
Mm.
you know, um, but so he needs to use like those kind of skills. Um, but yeah, and then Valkyrie. Going to Valkyrie, I had a real kind of moment of Valkyrie, which annoyed me quite a lot. Kind of thing, which was the fact that she was she had a really good story of kind of missing her sisters and taking on the mantle of king of Asgard, New Asgard. Um, there was a real deep story, and then having Gore essentially go, "Your sisters were all killed by a god at the behest of a god. So where was your god when you asked for help?" Kind of like it's very good. You could have had a really good moment of kind of Valkyrie coming to realize that she's been a at the beck and call of gods all her life, and half of them haven't answered her call.
And that's her character was the perfect opportunity to have through dialogue the other side of the argument. They have to be able to spruce it through the movie. If they were ever going to address this, they have to give both sides. And she could have given the argument for the faithful, let's say. And again, missed that one completely. They just went right over their head to kind of go, oh, now's her chance. And you're right. She's perfectly placed to have feelings
Yeah,
and
conflict.
doubts, but also explain where she was coming from, that she still believed, she's hanging out with a god. Like she's the great mouthpiece for the faithful right there. And could have given reasons, and they could have made this a much better movie. I'm going to say that at the end of everything. How about the lack of respect when it comes to her? At one point, she's holding Thor's thunderbolt, or not Thor, Zeus's thunderbolt. I think everybody holds Zeus's thunderbolt at some stage or another. Um, I've never seen a pool cue more impressive than the squiggly thunderbolt. Like Zeus, the apex god, who kind of has the great scene, don't get me wrong, then gets sidelined, killed, except nobody ever dies in anything ever, um which I'm fine to gloss over. But the fact that then like take his thunderbolt, and it's practically like they can just hand it around between each other, whereas anytime I saw her with it, I thought it's a perfect chance to just show what a badass kind of pseudo god she almost is, in this world of gods being superheroes, not just gods being, gaseous deities out in the cosmos or whatever other portrayals they've had.
Yeah, just show Valkyrie as the badass person she is, And no, didn't really get too much of that. Her whole
This pencil was about as important as Thor's or as Zeus's thunderbolt in that movie. It's just like, there it is, we have it now. It's like a fork.
yeah, it was a fairly kind of bad. It was a fairly kind of bad betrayal of that kind of weapon of power and stuff like that, because it's supposed to be the most powerful weapon, Zeus, or powerful god weapon. Despite the fact that they have Stormbreaker, which is meant to be the most powerful weapon, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I also did you feel the pacing suddenly picked up really close to the end, where it was just like, I'm now going to go battle the bad guy, and we were just like, wait a minute, how do you know where to go? And he goes, I won't get lost, don't worry. It's like, yeah, don't, and then he also, like, quick realization that a weapon that could possibly never have been made is the key to essentially the great, like, a great and powerful being.
Complete wang doodle. It was such a MacGuffin to say, right, Stormbreaker can fire its own kind of rainbow bridge. It can do all that good, and it's got Bifrost pissing out of it. Also, that's going to be the thing that'll turn out to get us to where we want, with the person that can grant the wish, or the first one that gets there. It all just felt like it's Deus Exy in the most kind of, we've painted ourselves into a few corners here where we were writing the jokes. Sure, that'll do it. Yeah, let's strap that to the front of a boat and away we go. Pissy.
I know. And then the other part with it that I did, the part that I did enjoy is in Infinite or Eternity, is the remember in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when Ego is essentially saying that he'll spread it, and then you see Peter Quill's eyes gloss over and you see them all going like starry and black.
Yeah,
that's what Eternity is, kind of thing. It's the entire representation of our universe, 616.
yeah, now that the multiverse has been
Yeah,
made cinematic,
there are other infinities. But yeah, and then the penultimate. This is a big spoiler, guys. Jane Foster's eventual passing and Gore's eventual kind of turning of the realization and stuff like that. Like pep talk from Thor going, the thing you weren't looking for was not revenge. The thing you were looking for was love, kind of thing. Didn't care that Jane died. Sorry. Didn't care that Gore changed his mind. Like, because of the actual, like, absolute inundated piles of like jokes and stuff like that. There was no emotional impact about her passing. Like, there was no emotional impact about the fact that, like, Thor was just like, you're gonna kill me anyway, so like, you're just gonna kill me anyway, so go choose the thing that you want, because all you want is actually just for your daughter to be back, kind of thing. And it's just like, oh, cruel. I don't care anymore. Like, I was actually just going, Gorth, kill them all.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of this movie, I was talking to my fiance. I was just like, the only way that they can fix this movie being involved in the MCU is to have it not be in 616. This is an alternative universe thing, because they can do that now, because it would completely, like, I don't care.
True. And with the little time we have left, can we address just that, really, that overall the feeling from this movie was one of, well, this is a bit of fun, and take it as that and you'll enjoy it. Sure, not all Marvel stuff has to be so interconnected or important. Just have a bit of fun and enjoy it. No. And here's why I say no. You can do that with Ragnarok. If you do it well, yeah. Not everything has to be ultimately important everywhere else. But you still can't go back to the days when, sure, comic book movies, they're only a bit of crack in a big bullshit world anyway. Paint some colors on it and the kids will enjoy it. This is as close to that feeling as I've gotten. And that worries me. At this point in their, particularly now we're in a phase 4 that has seemed a bit aimless, a bit rudderless, a bit directionless. Oh, crap. Could there not have been worse timing for this, as far as I'm concerned? Because now you need to start writing the ship back the other way. Let's face it, Iron Man is funny as hell. Iron Man's hilarious. Iron Man's a charming, slick, James Bond style movie in some ways. Iron Man helped start all of this, because it didn't just go, sure, it's all just a couple of metal suits and a rich guy and the kids will love it and shoot some lasers out of your eyes or something, the way that comic book movies and properties used to be thought of, talked about, and treated. We've got to enjoy the MCU thus far because they've not made this mistake up until now. And I fear if they don't watch out, if they make this mistake again, sayonara. It's all back to comic strips in the Sunday newspaper.
Like, well, this is the thing, because we've had, I think the start of the MCU has started off strong, and then it's continued on. I think the start of every phase that we've had has started off weak and then gotten better. This has started off strong and gotten worse. Like, because like Spider-Man was a great movie. It was really enjoyable. Multiverse of Madness, I enjoyed, but it is not on the top of the biggest on my list. Kind of thing.
Issues.
Thor: Love and Thunder. It made me realize that Dark World is not a good movie.
Okay, we've got 4 minutes left. Can you tell me that in 30 seconds? What's the significance? How did it make you realize that?
This is essentially the oversaturation of comedy in a film that is, or comedy with characters that have essentially de-evolved, as in they are not characters of themselves. Okay, with a useless villain, not because of the person who's playing them, but because of the storyline and everything like that. Okay, it doesn't have any real evolution of the characters. It is a completely useless film kind of thing. Dark World is the dark.
Oh, I thought
version.
You were describing Dark World there for a minute.
Dark World is essentially them going darker with Thor and kind of trying to make it into a way more serious film, which they shouldn't have because it's Thor, kind of thing. And the only saving grace, which is still not enough anymore, that Loki had a really good development story in it, but it's not enough to save it anymore, because I've now realized that, like, no matter how one character gets on within a movie, it's about the whole movie as a whole, kind of thing.
For the record, everyone, Paul has, and I would never say that you said that Dark World was good, but Paul has been gently able to try and defend it from my unrelenting attacks. So, Paul, I'm glad now you won't even do that. I'll just be able to stomp on it anytime I feel like it for fun. Let's rate the Thor movies really quickly, Paul. Okay. It's Ragnarok, Thor, or maybe Thor.
I like Thor. Maybe Ragnarok. I like Thor Ragnarok, which goes Love and Thunder, Dark World.
Thanks. Just in case that Love and Thunder was going to go below Dark World, I had to check.
No, because Gore is a really good vehicle for the characters and stuff. There are funny moments and stuff like that. Like, it's a watchable
and it sounds great.
Film.
It's an enjoyable soundtrack. For me, I enjoyed rocking out in the cinema. We have had some comments that we should close out on, Paul, if you're okay, because I think we're down to the last few minutes.
Yeah.
Derpy Gaming says this movie was very mid. I had fun, but the jokes didn't hit all over overused, absolutely. And they were doing it just to move the plot along. The movie you compare it to is the first Ant-Man, one that I've also had fun taking the mickey out of. But it looks really good now compared to all this. Kevin Feige pulls Uno reverse card and gets Galactus to appear. And do you want to take Jared's comment? Because I think it's a good one too.
I think you underestimate just how low the standards of the average MCU fan are. No.
Jared, I know who you're talking about, so to speak, but that doesn't get you 800 million opening weekend. You need them and everyone else. They can't afford to lose sections of their flock, because their success has been being able to appeal to everybody by making good art that got people to see past its comic origins and lose their prejudice. This film is going to have set that back. Infinity
War and Thor Ragnarok, the last kind of sections of Thor Ragnarok, is an amazing Thor evolution character development story. And that's the kind of thing that, and that's a let me remind you, that is a Norse god. There's a Norse god called Thor who flies around with a cape and stuff like that, and it's ridiculous. His thing shows the most emotional, not the most emotional, but it shows the emotional levels at which MCU can go to. And welcome to my...
Can I get everybody to like, share, and subscribe, since we have about 40 seconds left? So, and comment down below. Please comment. Let us know what you think. Paul?
Thanks very much, guys. I've been Paul.
I've been Patrick.
We've been Heroes Out.
And we love and thunder you all.
Welcome to our TED
That sounds weird.
Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Thank you for coming to TED Talk. Bye.